Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Slow Art Friday. My name is Christy McMillan. I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement here at the Asheville Art Museum, and I'm joined by Sylvie Horvath, who's one of our touring docents and will be leading today's conversation. Each Friday at 12 p.m., docents lead virtual interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joy of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Sylvie will lead us in an interactive conversation about three artworks in the museum's current special exhibition, Vantage Points, contemporary photographs from the Whitney Museum of American Art. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so with each one. Sylvie will allow us time to look at each work on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Sylvie, myself, and each other throughout the program. A few notes before we get started. You notice that your microphone and video were muted by default. We welcome you to turn on your video at any time. We love to see bright smiling faces on a Friday afternoon, and I'll make it in just a moment so that you can unmute your microphone. Choose a quiet room and close the door. Please do silence any alerts from nearby devices, as they can be very distracting during the conversation. If you do turn on your video, try not to sit in front of a window, lamp, or other strong source of light or movement. Use headphones and microphone for best sound quality. While you can log in using your smartphone, we do recommend using a desktop, laptop, or tablet to see slides or meeting tools on a larger screen. Make sure that your screen name includes your first name and last initial, or first name and last name, so that we know who we're talking to throughout the program. In order to ask questions or make comments, you're more than welcome to unmute your microphone when Sylvie asks for questions or comments. A second way to participate is to type your comment in the chat box. A third way is to raise your hand in the participant sidebar, and I will call on you and ask you to unmute your microphone. Methods 2 and 3 can sometimes take a while to get to all of those great comments, so please do unmute your microphone when Sylvie asks for questions or comments. Finally, we are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, make sure that your video and audio remain muted and use the chat box to submit questions or comments. At this time, I'm going to make it so that folks can unmute themselves. So you're welcome to unmute yourself at any time, but please, unless you're making a comment or asking a question, leave your microphone muted so that we can try and cut down on any distractions coming through. Do we have any questions before we get started? All right, Sylvie, what will we be talking about today?
Well, there are so many people, different people and different circumstances that make up this world. And I've chosen 3 photographs from Vantage Point exhibits to exemplify this. We'll spend about 15 minutes on each. And before I actually show you the first artwork, I'd like to help you better envision it by realizing that it is approximately 4 feet by 6 feet in size. In other words, quite large. Let's take 10 seconds to look at the whole work. All right, what is going on in this artwork?
I see a gentleman that's either seeing someone or he's definitely contemplating something. I think he's serious in his facial emotions above the eyes and the nose and the eyebrows there. And either he's just seen someone, as I say, or he's contemplating something. I'm struck also by the lighting and the shadow on the jacket and his head and his shirt. So.
Okay, so you think he's meeting someone, seeing someone, or has just met someone, and that's because of the brow, the way his brow looks is the reason that you think so. What more can we find?
Well, he looks pretty intense to me. Like there's something more going on that he's maybe concerned about. And he's also very well dressed. Everything matches perfectly. Everything is tied perfectly. That's it.
What makes you feel that he's so intense?
Well, just his eyes, the eyebrows, the lines around there, on his forehead.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And even his mouth, the way his mouth is, I don't know, like he wants to do something or say something.
Very good. Very interesting. So it's because of his eyes and his forehead and his mouth that he looks so intense. And once again, you bring up the forehead, which is very interesting. Anything else that we can find?
Lisa? Sorry, Anna Neal. Lisa had her hand up. Then we'll come back to you.
Oh, okay, fine.
I was just
All right,
going,
fine.
I was going to add that it has a really cinematic quality to me, the lighting, and for me, it looks like he's witnessing something, that he's looking, you know, to his left there, witnessing something.
What about the lighting makes you find it so interesting?
It's
That
just
was-
so,
that was
it's
what
so
I was-
stark. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, it's just very stark.
I was
What makes it so stark?
going to comment on that.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
background is so dark, and the lights in the two lights are sort of fuzzy, not like he could be on a street or in a building, but it's very dark. And I agree. I think he's witnessing something that it's very intense.
Yes. What do you think he might be witnessing? Something happy, something sad, something exciting?
Sally said she feels like there's a spotlight, ugh, a spotlight on him, and Micah Jean agreed it looks like a still from a movie or a TV. Sandy had an interesting comment that she was thinking he looked like an anchor man with professional lighting.
Yes, he does in a way. I agree with that. He does look like an anchor man with professional lighting. Well, let me tell you something that I was going to tell you later, but I'll tell you now since it seems like the appropriate time. What this photographer did is he put a strobe light on a scaffold higher up in Times Square, and then from the front, he used a long zoom lens to take the picture, and that's how he got this effect.
Barbara, you had your hand up.
For me?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that it's very dark all around him, and he spotlighted whatever the artist, even if he set it up that way, the way Sylvie had explained, he is really spotlighting individuals. Like there is something, because it's so dark, and the person is really, there's nothing distracting from him. There's only him and his emotion in this photograph, which I find very compelling.
Yeah.
Right.
But we're left to imagine what the rest of his body is doing because we only see part of his torso. So you don't really know, is he standing, is he sitting, what his hands are actually doing. I mean, that's all left up to interpretation or imagination. And he's obviously well dressed. I like that tie. I haven't seen a tie with polka dots that big like forever.
That wide tie.
Yeah, I like the tie.
This is going to sound like a weird comment, but as someone who's constantly covered in dog hair, I am just really struck by not only how well dressed he is, but how well put together he is. I mean, I cannot discern a dog hair, a cat hair, or even a tiny piece of lint on that suit. He's like dressed to the nines and impeccably turned out.
He is. He's dressed very well. Well, what would that tell you about him?
can I say something to that, Christy?
Sure.
Sure.
There is Photoshop. Now, they might have cleaned him up a little bit. No, I mean, just for a point, you know, when a photographer does something, they can alter things and change things to their liking to create the impression or the image that they want you to see.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that more later on. Thanks, Barbara.
We're so unaccustomed to seeing, I mean, because of in the last year, just think about walking around downtown. If you happen to drive through or walk through downtown, we just don't see people looking like this these days. We maybe hope to in the future, but it's not usual right now.
Now, an interesting comment from Micah, and yes, we don't see people dressed up like that usually these days, unless it's for some reason. And Micah seems to think it's because he could be a detective. What do you think of that? Do you have any other ideas about the way he looks, the way he's dressed, what his profession is?
By today's standards, he looks like a journalist, just because those are the only people you see dressed like that.
So you think journalists are the only people you see?
Like a TV journalist,
Yeah,
someone who's seen, not like a newspaper journalist.
Right.
exactly.
I don't think he looks like either a detective or a journalist, because they don't dress, a TV journalist maybe, but detectives don't dress like that. They don't make enough money to dress like that. The lighting is so spectacular. Even his left shoulder is crisp and straight. The left shoulder, not the right one.
And the contrapposto,
Yeah.
it's the dynamic. It's as if he's turning or moving.
Yeah, it's the lighting is just amazing.
Yes, it seems we're all struck by the lighting on this photo. Micah says an undercover FBI person or someone undercover. Oh, Micah, you must watch a lot of mysteries. I do too. I love them. So.
You know, it could be not his profession that he's dressed for. I mean, if he's in Times Square, sometimes in New York, people would still get dressed to go to a symphony or Lincoln Center or perhaps a Broadway play if it was open, or out to a fancy restaurant for dinner. Or so he could be dressed as something that other than his profession.
Right. He could be dressed for a certain occasion. Yes, he could be. Do you think that this is posed, or this is just spur of the moment taken? This photo?
I don't think it's.
Go ahead, Norma.
I don't think it's posed. I think it has a very real quality to that expression. That's my feeling.
Okay, so you think the expression is one of the reasons. What about the expression makes you think it's not posed?
Unless he's a good actor, and that could be too. Just the way his face is. I mean, again, his eyes, the intensity in his eyes and around his forehead, his mouth. It just doesn't look posed to me. But if he's an actor, it could be.
True, very true. It could be if he's an actor. Any other comments?
What, didn't you say that the photographer or the artist had used a zoom lens? Right. In different distance between the camera.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same thing. I was going to ask the same thing. It appears, I believe you said it was a telephoto lens from a fair distance. So the posing of it would be rather difficult, I would think. It looks like, he's seeing something he doesn't know quite what to do about, whether he should interfere or not. That was my first impression. It's definitely tense. And I was thinking he could be, he could be an executive. He could be someone definitely out for the evening. It's dark. Although Times Square is not dark. That's a bit of a puzzle. So, but yeah, I would question posing it with this picture.
Okay. But then again, and I'm not telling you anything about it yet, it could be that he did this to get the effect, and it could be posed.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I
So
guess.
we don't know, but some of you have come up with some good reasons as to why the look on his face and such, that it probably isn't posed. Barbara, Pressman, you had something you wanted to add?
I feel like his expression is very intense, but it feels like it's in motion. It looks like his face would change. It looks like he's about to maybe say something, comment on something. It doesn't have a static feeling. It has a feeling that it's moving forward.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I know there's a lot more to talk about with this photo, but I'm going to stop you here and just tell you a few things about the photo itself. And the photo is called Head Number 1 by Philip Lorca de Corcher. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And he originally was known for staging photos that were very staged, and say the person in the photo was in a very odd place that you wouldn't expect a person to be in, or surrounded by things you wouldn't expect. And then in 1999, he changed his photos and he started looking at people and things. And he sort of is known as the person who started the acceptance of color photography. There were exhibits before at MoMA of some color photographers in the 60s, but it still was not accepted as an art form. But he had an exhibit in MoMA in the 70s, and after that, color photography moved to the next level. He believes that we're each in our own little universe of secrets, and that if you pose someone, you cannot know who they really are, because we all put on a facade when we know that someone is taking a picture of us. I know I'm going a little longer on him, but there's one really interesting ethical argument that is brought up, because he was sued by a religious person who was not supposed to be in photographs. And the question came up in public places, because this was Times Square, people just walking by. In public places, do you have a right to privacy, or does the artist have a First Amendment right to take the photo or to create the art? And they found for the artist. I'm going to move on now to the next one. I have to tell you that researching these artists is fascinating, because they have such interesting histories behind them. This photo is a little over 3 by 4 feet, so it is a large photo once again, and it's mounted on something a little slightly larger than that. Let's take 10 seconds to look at it. All right, what is going on in this artwork?
I see a woman, and again, she appears to be dressed to me for a special occasion. Just her hair, her makeup, her jewelry, the dress. She has an air of confidence in her body language. And I notice what appears to be a missing bra or bathing suit strap almost, and the lighting in her skin there by the shoulder.
So you notice an air of confidence about her. What causes that air of confidence? What do you see that makes you think she has an air of confidence?
Mostly the body language, the positioning of her hand and her her head, the way it's back, and like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Her
that does.
Her
Go
head's
ahead.
thrown back and her lips are pursed and she's looking straight forward at the viewer.
Yes, she is. She's looking straight forward in the viewer, and her head seems to have that look on it. Any other comments?
Her nose in the air.
Her nose is in the air. Very good. Yes, her nose is in the air.
But I'm struck by her around her eyes. It looks like she had a bad suntan experience in the tanning booth.
With sunglasses on.
Yeah, with the black mark to it. And it doesn't go with the elegance of the rest of her. It's really, you know, stands out. I was attracted to that immediately. I went, what? What's wrong with those eyes there?
No. Very interesting. Yes, something about the eyes and the lightness about the eyes, as you say, just doesn't seem quite on.
I know. I think it's well. It takes a lot of work to look this good, but now they're showing a little defect to show part of the work that it takes to get to look that good.
Yes, yes. It shows that there is some defect, that you can't be perfect. And Christy mentions bloodshot eyes. What do you think about that? Did you notice the bloodshot eyes?
I can't see them. Can't see them.
Wow, now I see him.
Now
It's almost, he made her look clown-like because of the way he emphasizes the makeup that she put on to look good, that you see it, you know, you see that, as someone said, that preparation. I'm also really taken with what happens with the skin, that you see almost perspiration, you know, you just see the wetness of the body.
What makes you think the body is wet? What do you see on the skin that does that?
Well, there's a shine. You can see the shine, and you can, to me, you see moisture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Norma, what makes you think that the photographer is male? Because you used the male pronoun.
Well, that is interesting. I don't know why I used it. I don't know.
And that's going to be very interesting when we discuss the artist, the photographer.
Yeah.
In this, yes.
I can't imagine another woman taking that photograph to show all those marks that a woman makes to get dressed, to look good. Maybe that's why.
So you can't imagine a woman portraying another woman looking like that.
Yeah, like a clown.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting that you brought up she looks like a clown. What makes you think she looks like a clown?
Well, it's just what he did, you know, with under the eyes and the eye makeup above and around the lips. Just, you know.
Yes.
I don't want to be seen that way.
Okay, what more can we find here? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm not convinced that that's not sunglasses with the tan line on the bra strap. However, there was a period of time when women's makeup was pretty white, that you used white above your eyes, and even at one time you used white below. So I'm having trouble placing this in a time period because of the hairstyle and even the dress style. I don't think that this woman's very healthy. She's really thin. If you look at her chest, you can see. And so I've got some question there. I'm also wondering about her age. You know, she's well kept, so she could be a rather indeterminate age. Those are just observations. And yes, she's saying, you know, this is me.
Yeah,
but I'm not convinced she's very healthy.
Yeah, very interesting.
Mrs. Robinson, I see that.
You think because she's so thin, she's not healthy. And you also bring up difficulty figuring out a time when this occurred.
Yes, a time frame.
Because
when this
of the way her hair is and her eyes and using the white when people use, women used to use white below and above their eyes. Very interesting, yes.
I find it interesting also, it does not look like her fingernails are manicured, that she has done the fingernails, and that seems out of place with the dress and the jewelry and the makeup and the hair. So,
There are a few oddities about this. The nails that aren't done just don't seem to go with the rest of her and the way she's done up. Good observation. Anything else?
The background color.
What about the background color?
It's an interesting choice of colors and the effect that it has on everything that's against it, the skin tone, the garment, because what my eye is drawn to when I look at this first is that brilliant royal purple. And then comparing that and looking at it against what it does against the background color, and then what the background color, the impact of the background color on her hair, her face, her skin tone.
Yes, yes. Very interesting observation. So the importance of the background color that a photographer uses, because the color actually brings out that purple in her dress. Interesting observation. What more can we find?
I think the cropping is interesting. I mean, why crop off her elbow and the other part of the poof on the dress over there and only show one hand? I mean, it's almost like when you take pictures, someone says, oh, you chopped the top of their head off. It seems that the missing elbow, hand, and dress, I don't know if I like that.
And you think that's intentional, that she cropped in those areas?
Oh, yeah. I think
Why do you think she might have done that?
Well, by cutting off one hand and not showing the other, you're missing the sort of unmanicured hands, which I can't remember if it was Barbara P. or Billy that noticed those, or Laurel, sorry. But that's like the one piece that's sort of betraying that sort of coiffed perfection that she's going for. Yeah.
To me, it feels almost like a parody, like she's trying to say something about being all dressed up and all decked out. There's another level to it that's, there's more to something than what you see, or by showing those imperfections and having her a little off kilter and all.
That's exactly what I get from it too, Barbara. It's
I agree.
It's too much. It's too much.
But I love it anyway.
And I like that word parody, that it's a parody. What do you think it's a parody on?
I think I have a little knowledge about this, but it really feels like a parody on movie stars, like someone who's Hedy Lamarr, or somebody really dressed to the nines going to a Hollywood cocktail party, and I don't know, just a parody of people who are have airs about them.
There's also some disagreement over in the chat box about the era. I think everybody's seeing things from 1960s, The Graduate, Mrs. Robinson, to 80s hard partying upper class glamazon.
And I could see them both, the Mrs. Robinson and the 80s glamorization. Yes.
I really like the negative space in her arm. I think that really balances her head real well. I think that was deliberate to do that.
What about the textures in this photo? Anyone notice the different textures?
Oh, yeah.
What can you tell me about the textures?
Well, the dress doesn't appear to be satin. It looks more like taffeta. It has the body of taffeta, therefore it's able to hold that that sleeve. So it has much more than that soft satin look. And somebody asked about the lines or about the cropping. Look at the line of the negative space where her arm is and how it pairs perfectly with the line in the shoulder of her dress.
Very interesting observation. Yes, yes.
A lot of activity going on.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to throw a little. I'm going to throw a little bit of a. Is this a woman?
Well, what do you think, people? Is this a woman?
Yeah, I think it is.
Now, why do you think it is a woman?
The bridge of her nose. Sometimes you can tell by the bridge of a nose if someone is a male or a female. And I don't know. Looks to
No
me
Adam's apple.
No, Adam's okay.
that too.
Is it an Anil? Is that how I pronounce your name correctly?
Anna Neal.
Yeah.
Her neck is rather thick. Her chest is very flat. There's no softness really to her. I mean, it just suddenly occurred to me that if you take away the hair, which I'm not sure is not a wig, and just look at the shape of the face and the head, it certainly could be a woman, but maybe it's just the sign of the times. It was something I questioned.
And I think it's a good question because I know I'm watching a series now where there is a man who is a trans as a woman, and some of these features that you bring up are what makes you think he possibly could be a trans. So yes, very good observation. Interesting observations. Anything else about this that you've
Just
noticed?
about the textures, the hair looks like there's a lot of hairspray in there, and
Yeah.
And the skin does look. Someone commented before, but it does look very glistening on the skin there. So.
Yeah. I like the flatness sort of her hair on top, sort of a duller, the shine of her body, and then the totally different look of the dress, totally different texture to it. Someone mentioned that the arms are muscular for a woman, but I don't see the rest of it. Sandy, do you want to go on with that? Sandy Shepard?
Yeah, I don't see that as a skinny man, but more muscular for a woman. I mean, a muscular woman. And I also see small hands. So I don't see it as a possible man.
Okay, yeah.
The arms for me, and this goes back to what somebody said earlier, they're just really thin. And, we're seeing the musculature, but it's not necessarily like developed musculature. And again, I guess that's something that makes me think to like 1980s cocaine, ultra skinny, unhealthy. That was sort of, my comment about the bloodshot eyes. There's just so much here that just doesn't sit quite right.
Let me mention something. Devin Farrow, in her Work of the Week comments, says that this photograph caught my attention from across the gallery. And I remember my first remarks to one of the curators about this work. I can smell her from here. Why do you think she said that?
Oh, maybe she thought she was drunk.
Maybe she thought she was drunk. That could be
cigarette smoke, stale sweat. Like there's so many smells that I smelled as soon as you said that.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
It's perfume, too much perfume.
Yep.
For all of the foof and quality of it, there's a harshness to it.
Yeah.
When you say smell, there's a harshness to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I smelled the stale. As soon as I read that, I smelled the stale perfume. And it's amazing how someone's one comment could bring up all these different effects. Go ahead, Barbara.
I think there's also something out of kilter with her body language. Here, her head is like this, really like, look at me, but then she's kind of slumped in. Do you know, she doesn't see, she's not sitting, like for a pose, having, it's like she's slumped in, but her head is up. There seems to be a contrast between how she's holding her head and maybe she,
Yeah, very good observation, because that's true. Her head is sort of held in a position of, I'm in charge, but yet her body, her shoulders aren't back.
Yeah.
Her chest isn't out. So there is a definite contrast there.
So I just feel like she's holding her head up to minimize, the sagging that could come across in the picture. I do that a lot, the way that I position my head when pictures are being taken, or have started, making sure that my turtleneck is up.
I have to tell you, I have a friend who always puts her head on my shoulder so her neck doesn't show in pictures. I'm sorry, go ahead, Christy.
It's exactly that. I mean, if you look sort of close to her neck, right, you can see, maybe what she's trying to hide by, putting her head just so and at the right angle.
Right. If you have to give it, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If she were to speak, what would she say?
Good question. If she were to speak, what do you think she'd say? What do you think she'd say, Billy?
So what?
Yeah.
So what?
Anyone else?
Got a light?
I'm so sick of this shit.
Yep. Mm-hmm. If you had to give a name to this photo, if you had to give it a title, what title would you give it?
So what?
That's a good title. So what?
I could say more about, there are other, she very possibly would be using the F word.
Anything else? Any other possible titles for this? Or blurbs, if you want to put it that way. Okay, well, let me tell you about this. You have seen this woman before. It is a woman. This is Untitled number 400 by Cindy Sherman, and it's also a color print. Does anybody know where you've seen this woman before? Well, some of you have. I think a lot of you look familiar to me, and we're at my last Slow Friday. Well, Christy, you want to tell Barbara?
I saw her. I didn't know who she was, and I think it was maybe about 8 years ago. I went to MoMA, and she was having a show, and I was totally blown away because just amazing work. So I'm a fan.
Well, don't you think she is probably the most well-known woman photographer of
one of the time? Yes.
Maybe Amy Leibowitz. I don't know, but yes, she's.
Yeah, there are some, yes, but for her time and for what she's doing, yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
do any of you recognize this?
Photographs herself.
Yes. Do any of you recognize this lithograph? We looked at it about a month ago. Some of you were with me, some of you weren't. That's Cindy by Robert Longo. It's a possession of the museum. And that is Cindy Sherman, the photographer of the photo we just saw before. That is Cindy Sherman. Yes, she, as I mentioned back then, was living with Robert Longo, and they eventually split and became friends. A few things about Cindy Sherman. She studied painting at Buffalo State College, and then she eventually turned to photography as a medium. Her underlying goal is presenting a novel critique of female representation in photographs, and it's been unchanged for most of her career. She acts as model, photographer, stylist, hairdresser, and makeup artist in most of her photos. And Jonathan Keats writes for Forbes, about one of her shows, the show spotlights an artist whose subject is often herself as somebody else, caught in a moment of masquerade that highlights the illusory nature of not only photography, but of identity itself. So once again, we're dealing with identity. Most of her works focused on women. Her artistic process continues to evolve. Recently, she decided to tackle a new subject, men. And she has male characters outfitted in slick comb-overs, camel coats, and more rebellious works. At 66, she started turning her attention to subjects like aging. And she said, using myself in the work now underscores certain elements of aging, which I otherwise could be less aware of. And she's very involved in the way men look at women sexually when they see women, and she juxtaposes it in her photographs. Any questions? Any comments?
I find it interesting that it's untitled, and not that just this one particular. I think all artists should title and sign their work, and that's just my personal opinion.
Anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, this is Micah. I had to step away for a minute, so I missed a critical point, which is this is a self-portrait, correct?
Yes, she is the model in her photos, and if you go online, you'll see a whole bunch of her photos with her as the model, as a clown, as many different figures. They're very interesting.
Gotcha, thank you.
I think it's important to note, though, that she's not ever taking a photo of herself as herself. She's always in disguise or in character, layered in makeup and wigs and costumes. It's really hard to say what Cindy Sherman, the person, looks like.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the next. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Movie.
Excuse me?
Robert Longo, I'm looking online right now. Didn't he do a movie about her?
He directed Johnny Mnemonic.
That's it.
The film.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next photo. And this one is approximately, hold on, I lost my, okay. This one is approximately 1 foot by 1.5 feet, a little more than 1.5 feet. So let's take 10 seconds to look at this. Okay, what is going on in this photo?
To me, it looks like a little boy that looks cold and scared, maybe. The weather looks ominous by the clouds in the sky, and by his hair looks like it's being blown. And I'm almost wondering where the vantage point of out by the middle of a road and the poles, maybe it's a school in the background there. I can't tell the building.
So what about when you look at him, what about him makes you think he's scared?
I think the rigidness of his body, his hands and feet, and just the look on his face.
Okay, so, and is there anything specific about, I don't want to put you on the spot, so you could just pass, but is there anything specific about the look on his face?
Maybe just his mouth and eyes, like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be posing, I think, for this picture.
Interesting. You don't think he wants to be posing. That's an interesting observation. Let's hear from someone else. Is there anyone who agrees that he doesn't want to be posing?
I don't know, to me, it looks almost like anybody's photo album and you say to some little kid, go stand over there.
Right.
Go take your picture. And he like has like this half-hearted smile. Let's get this over with, Mom.
Yep. So it looks like a ordinary everyday photo.
Yeah.
Of someone in the family.
I think I might have one of my photograph of my son like that.
Yeah.
So you know how it feels. Yes.
The person taking, he's not looking at the person taking the picture. The person taking the picture is photographing the event or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Do you think
okay.
Could we get a close-up on his face, possibly? Okay. Anything else? You think he's not looking at the person who's taking the picture? Anything else that you notice about his face that you might find interesting?
First I thought he was a girl.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Now, what made you think he was a girl?
That's just what my first impression was. That's all I can say.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Billy? You thought he was a girl too?
Collar, yeah, the collar on the sweater.
The color on the sweater.
The collar on the sweater looks like more like a girl's sweater. You know, most little boy sweaters have a V-neck, and that collar looks more like a girl's sweater. So.
So you think the collar on the sweater makes it look like a girl? Mm-hmm.
Unless it's another country, unless it's like England or, you know, things change culturally.
Mm-hmm. Now, what makes you think he's from another country?
He looks like a friend of mine, her daughter's married to, her husband is from Iceland. And this child has kind of a look that their child has.
Could you explain that a little further about the
look?
Well,
there's the complexion, the kind of the pale, creamy complexion and the light hair. Mm-hmm. And even the sweater, like you're talking about a girl's sweater or a boy's sweater. Sometimes people from another country, the clothes are styled differently from what we're used to, sort of thinking about this sex wears that and another sex wears that.
So it's the coloration of his face, the skin color, and once again, the sweater, as someone mentioned before, the style of the sweater was interesting, and you thought that might be from another country. Anyone else? What else can we find?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I feel like for me, he is almost splitting the image in half. And to the right, the sky is darker. There's that low-lying brick building. I don't know what it is. It looks like, you know, maybe an institutional type of building. And there are some shadows coming right off the little boy to the right there. Some stark shadows pointing in that direction. Then to the left, to our left, there's that open road. The sky's brighter. So it just has like this kind of stark, almost dichotomy, left versus right, when I look at the picture as a whole.
So you're finding a lot of contrasts there on the left.
Right.
Right.
Even his face is so bright on that one side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sort of the lighting on his face is much brighter.
Right. Plus on his face, his mouth almost looks as if he was told to smile or say cheese. And he's like half-heartedly kind of sort of doing it. Yeah.
Yes, his mouth makes him look like he's half-heartedly trying to say cheese. Anything else we can find?
Sandy J in the chat box said maybe a first day of school.
Ooh, what makes you think it's a first day of school, Sandy?
I was just thinking that same kind of thing about, I have a couple of pictures like this of my son, and where you get to the school and you're like, oh shoot, I've got to take that first day picture. And you're, you know, it's kind of that hurried, get out of the car, shoot a picture and move on. But he looks hurried.
He looks hurried. Hmm.
Like, let me go. I got to get inside.
Yeah.
Yes, well, he does look like, let me go, I got to get outside. I agree. Yes, he does look like that. Anything else you notice?
Anna Neal, you're muted. There you go.
Okay, where he's standing, all the vegetation. It's not a groomed area. Could be a bus stop. It doesn't look like a schoolyard to me, because you know, schoolyards are groomed. They have playgrounds, etc. Could be a school back there, but that's definitely much more groomed around the building. So that sort of puzzled me. You know, is this, where is this? Where's this? I mean, it's definitely, of course, flatland and those were prairie type vegetation. So, but that's, you know, that struck me immediately. Like over in the left hand, for me, facing at the left hand side of the picture, you know, that's sort of a scraggly bush. So it might be fall, or it could be because there's leaves on the trees. I don't know.
So it looks like a place that's pretty wild. The nature around it is a little wild, and you think that's why it might not be a school then?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I think that exactly where he is, exactly, it's not a school.
Oh, okay.
Where he is standing is not a school.
I see. Yeah.
In the background, I don't know what that building is. Okay.
It could still be a first day of school picture if he's going to get on the bus. You know, like catch him before he gets on the bus.
Yes.
He's also not caught in the vanishing point of the road and the power lines on each side of the road.
Interesting, that perspective where he's right in that vanishing point there.
Drawing your attention to that face. I've got 3 comments. Sandy Shepherd, then Norma, then Barbara P.
Well, I am really interested in the sky, the storm that's coming. And my scenario is his mom's a photographer and he's so tired of her telling her to get in my picture. I've got to take this sky.
He's there for dramatic effect.
What are you saying? You're saying, let me go, let me go. Yes.
It's Norma, like when you're...
Sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
When you're traveling and there's a beautiful waterfall and your spouse says, get in the picture. You always got to get in the picture.
Prove you were there. Norma, then Barbara P, then Billy.
So the background looks very Americana to me. I've been working in many schools on the coast, and things are very flat, and this looks like a school building for sure. And yeah, it does look like a first day of school picture to me too. I mean, it's just like, let me take your picture right now. But to me, it's very Americana.
And so you think it's the first day of school, and it's flat looking, maybe out west somewhere, very American.
On the coast of North Carolina, it looks like this.
Eastern part of the state, at least.
Yes, exactly, the eastern part.
Okay, well, I have time for one last comment. There was someone you had.
Yeah, I was thinking that another reason they were taking the picture is maybe mom knitted that sweater and she wants a picture of it. It looks like
it is a beautiful sweater, yes. You know, I want you to note that we're all attracted to the sweater. We've all commented on that sweater. And when I tell you about this artist, you'll know a little about why we commented on it. This artist, the photographer, is a very lucky artist because he was born into a wealthy cotton growers family in Memphis, Tennessee, so he did not have to work for a living. And he was a self-taught photographer. He did win the Guggenheim Fellowship, which bothered me a little since he's so rich he doesn't need it and someone else could have used it. His work is credited with helping, oh, I am so sorry. I have to, well, no, that's fine. He's credited with helping establish color photography in the late 20th century as a legitimate artistic medium. And you'll notice the color in his photography, how vivid it is. And he uses a dye process. And the way he discovered this is that he was looking at ads, and in ads, they used this process at that time. And he was attracted by the vividness of the color. And so he started using it in his artwork. He has a belief that looking at patiently at what others ignore or look away from, if you look at it patiently, interesting things can be seen. And it doesn't have to be a person, it could be an object as well. In fact, his first photograph using this method of photography is a ceiling with a light hanging down, and the ceiling is red. Now, I didn't know this until I read more, that red is a very difficult color to use in art. His pictures form a portrait, not of individuals when he uses people, but of social relations in America's Deep South. Now, he doesn't like that people refer to him as representing the Deep South. He finds this is just a work, and you look at it as a work. It's a place where people know their place, yet at the same time appear fundamentally alone. And I do see, I myself happen to see that. I don't know, I'm sure you do as well. He chooses his subjects entirely by happenstance and claims to photograph a person in the same way he does a parking lot. I had this notion of what I called a democratic way of looking around, that nothing was more or less important. And he does bring out emotion in his picture, in his photos, if you look at some of the others. Are there any questions or comments before I close? Well, thank you. You've been great, great observations, taught me a lot too. And as I said, I love the biographies as much as I love the photos. So have a good weekend.
Thank you, Sylvie. Thank you, everyone, for coming. As usual, learned a lot. This was our second Slow Art Friday using artworks from our Vantage Points exhibition. We have a third Slow Art Friday, which just happens to be next Friday. As the conclusion of that series of selections from Vantage Points. And the one next week is going to be called Reading Faces and led by Hank Bovey. And it has 3 very different portraits that he is going to use in that conversation. So if you haven't already, please get signed up on our website, ashevilleart.org, and we will look forward to seeing you then. Thanks again, Sylvie. Thanks to all of you. Have a great weekend.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone.